Every once in a while, you make a decision that doesn't make a lot of sense to other people. Maybe not to your friends, not to your parents, maybe not even to the logical part of your own mind. And yet, deep down, you just know this is the right decision for me. Something inside of you says, I don't fully understand this, but I have to do it. And in my experience, those are the very decisions that end up changing your life for the better. And you look back and you go, God, that was the right choice. So today, I want to share with you 3 decisions that completely changed my life and how making similar decisions could positively impact your life. Each of these decisions went against what I had been doing before. Each of them required me to trust in something that I couldn't fully see, and each one opened doors that I didn't even know existed. And if you're in a place right now where you're questioning what's next for you, or you're scared of making the wrong choice, my hope is that this episode gives you some clarity, or at the very least, it gives you a reference point for the kinds of decisions that can shift your life in a direction towards your greatest potential. Now, before we get into the actual decisions, I want to just talk a little bit about the idea of making decisions, especially from the spiritual perspective, because most people operate from what I call the ground level perspective. That's the world of the 5 senses, the world that we can see and touch and hear and smell and feel. And it's what we're taught to value more than what we're intuiting inside, right? We're taught that you want to get good grades, you want to get a good job, you want to make good money, you want to buy the house, have the family, climb the ladder, retire comfortably. And look, there's nothing wrong with any of that. You absolutely need a place to live and you need money and all that, and everybody wants to be comfortable. But the problem is that approach force feeds us this external idealized version of what success is supposed to look like. Then we spend the next 2-3 decades chasing that definition, only to realize in our 40s and 50s and beyond that maybe we climbed the wrong ladder, because there's still this void inside that we haven't quite fulfilled. And that ground level view can convince us to sacrifice our health, our relationships, our peace, and our joy, all in the pursuit of external comfort and the perception of safety and trying to achieve some high status lifestyle. But when we start doing our inner work and we are able to pull back and see the 30,000 foot view, which is what I call the spiritual perspective, and we zoom out, that's where we can spot the patterns and the themes. And we can start to notice that, hey, every time I'm disappointed, it's because I was attached to a certain expectation, right? We can see cause and effect a lot more clearly. We realize that sometimes what we thought was bad timing was actually perfect timing for what we needed to learn and for who we needed to become along our path and purpose. And that's where the real freedom actually starts, because you're not just thinking about this stuff intellectually, you're actually living this perspective. And you start paying more attention to what feels aligned deep down inside. And while your head makes the decisions based on logic and comfort and safety, you know that your heart is making decisions based on your growth, your truth, and your purpose. And again, it's not either or. We actually need both. But most of us have this overdeveloped logic and underdeveloped access to our heart. It's kind of like being the guy in the gym who only works the upper body. He's got this huge upper body and these little chicken legs, right? Most people have been optimizing for that sort of upper body logic, comfort, convenience, control aspect of life. But when it comes to the heart and the spirit, that's where we have the chicken legs. And these 3 decisions that I'm going to share with you in this episode help me to switch that ratio and to start bulking up my chicken legs from a spiritual perspective. And that's what I hope sharing these decisions is going to help to do for you, is to inspire you to start optimizing for bulking up that spiritual aspect of your life that you may have been neglecting as well. And by the way, if you're new here, my name is Watkins. I've been teaching meditation and mindfulness for over 20 years. I've helped thousands of people from all walks of life cultivate more fulfillment from the inside out. And this channel is about showing you how to apply these different spiritual principles to real life situations. So it's not just theory. So let's get into it. Decision number 1, abstain from any substance that's keeping you from being your most authentic self. So for me, that meant alcohol. 27 years ago, I decided to stop drinking alcohol. And it wasn't because I had some rock bottom moment. There was no intervention or DUI. I had been reading these spiritual books at the time, and I started to notice patterns. Whenever I drank, I didn't really make the best decisions. I wasn't surrounding myself with the most inspiring people. And the morning after I drank, I wasn't very productive. I didn't have a lot of energy. It was hard to focus. Not to mention drinking was expensive. And the things that I would say or do while under the influence, I wasn't particularly proud of. So one day I just did the math and I realized that the return on investment from drinking alcohol just wasn't there. Now, I didn't quit overnight. I decided to gradually wean myself off over the course of 6 months. I cut hard liquor first, then I cut beer, then I was just drinking wine, and then just the occasional glass of wine. And after 6 months, I completely stopped drinking alcohol. And that's when I realized I didn't really miss it. And what was interesting was when I kept going out to the same places without drinking, I noticed that the experience was completely different. I wasn't having fun anymore because I didn't really enjoy being in those environments. I just enjoyed being buzzed while in those environments. But as the sober person, now waking up clear, energized, and productive, I had a completely different relationship with how I wanted to spend my time and what I considered to be a fun time. And I would say that one of the biggest myths that people have about not drinking is that they won't be fun. And they imagine that alcohol is what loosens them up. And I always ask, if alcohol really made you more of you, then why don't people drink a bottle of wine before going to a job interview or before going to an important meeting? Because deep down, we know that it doesn't actually make us a better version of ourselves. It definitely makes us a different version of ourselves, but that version is a less aware version of ourselves, not a more aware. And I went a long time without drinking anything. We're talking decades. And nowadays, I may have a little sip of mezcal here in Mexico if someone insists, or a celebratory sip of champagne there. But I can literally count on my one hand the number of times I've had a drink of alcohol over the past year or two, because I now realize that my awareness and my sense of presence is far more valuable than any buzz that I can get from alcohol. So if there's something dulling your awareness, whether it's alcohol or maybe it's weed or some other substance, I would recommend try stepping away from it for a week, just 7 days. And yes, it's not going to be easy, but you may be surprised at how much more clearly you can hear your own inner voice again. And I credit that one decision for helping me turn up the volume on my inner guidance, which is what led me to decision number 2. So decision number 2 was to follow my heart without apology. I remember being in my apartment in Harlem, New York in the 90s, and I just watched this bad Chris Rock movie where he played this worker who was cheating on his wife, and he was trying to chase this woman around. And in one scene, his boss pulls him aside and says, "Look, if you keep chasing women like I see you doing, you're going to start losing money." He said, "But if you chase money, you're never going to lose women." Now, I know that line is not a spiritual line, but something inside of me clicked. And I thought, I've been spending an inordinate amount of time chasing comfort, convenience, and the conventional idea of success. And I thought to myself, what happens if I start chasing my inner guidance as a means of securing all the other resources that I think that I need in my life for my path and purpose? So literally right there in my kitchen, I made a decision to start following my heart relentlessly, which means if it tells me to speak up, I'm going to speak up. When it tells me to take a leap of faith, I'm going to take a leap of faith. If it tells me to move to a different country, I'll move to a different country. And at the time, I've been reading these spiritual books, but I was still very much living in my head. And I realized that I had to put into practice what I had been reading. And so that was a way to sort of commit myself to practicing following the inner guidance instead of just talking about it all the time. And when I look back, I see that every time I took a leap of faith, every time I bet on myself, it always worked out for the best. And that wasn't necessarily obvious in the moment, but in hindsight, I can look back and say, oh, that was absolutely for the best. And that second decision shifted everything in me because it inspired me to leave the work that I was doing at the time, which was in the fashion industry, and to start exploring what I was truly passionate about, which was in the world of yoga and meditation and consciousness. And remember, this was the 1990s. There wasn't some booming wellness scene at the time. There were no roadmaps. You had to experiment, but that's what made it beautiful. It was a true exploration. And I'm not a woo-woo type of person. I know my name is Light and it sounds like I'm some airy-fairy type of dude, but I'm actually quite normal and grounded. And I just became deeply curious about what happens when you live from the inner guidance. So if something in your life feels a bit out of alignment, pay attention to your inner guidance. If you followed the first decision and you stop diluting your awareness, you're going to hear that inner guidance a lot louder. And that's going to allow you to tune in to what your heart has been trying to nudge you towards this whole time. And you're now in a position to not only hear it more clearly, but to take action on it as well. Because here's the thing, that voice doesn't go away if you just ignore it. It'll keep whispering, it'll keep nudging you. You can't drown it out. It'll come to you in the day, it'll haunt you at night. And the only way to quiet that inner voice, in my experience, is to follow it. Now, I'm not saying you have to blow up your life in order to follow it. You want to absolutely start small. For instance, if you're standing in line at the grocery store or something, and that voice says, hey, you really like that person's shoes, then follow it. Just, say, hey, I really like your shoes. And or thank someone who you saw do an act of kindness. And anything else that you would normally talk yourself out of that is leaving a positive impact or positive impression in someone else's life. And that's how you can start following your inner guidance, by just doing it in those little tiny moments. And then it builds up and builds up. And next thing you know, you do have courage to pivot in your career or change the way you're relating to your partner or whatever other inner guidance you're receiving from your heart.
5 signs that your meditation practice is too complicated. Number 1, you rarely feel like doing it. Number 2, when you do sit to meditate, your mind feels like a fire hose full of random thoughts. Number 3, you're focusing on your breath or on something else. Number 4, your body gets antsy and you just want to lie down. And last but not least, you can't wait for the time to end and you feel relieved when it does. If any of these sound familiar, you're working way too hard in meditation. And here's the truth, most people are. But the good news is that the fix is embarrassingly simple, but you won't find it in a book or in an online course, not even my own. That's because learning how to master meditation is a lot like learning how to ride a bike or how to swim. Those activities are extremely simple to do, but impossible to learn without somebody teaching you the principles and then providing you with real-time feedback. And meditation is no different. That's why in the age of AI, I still teach live in-person meditation trainings. And if you're ready to master meditation, you're invited to Mexico City this fall to learn how to meditate with ease, the way meditation was always meant to be learned. Just go to mexico.beginmeditating.com or click the QR code to get all of the information about the early registration discount. And I hope to see you in Mexico City very soon.
And then that leads us to decision number 3, which is to be radically consistent with the practice that keeps you feeling the most aligned. So as many of you know, I started meditating in the 90s, but I wasn't very consistent. I'd meditate here and there and I'd feel good. And then when I met my meditation teacher in 2003 in Los Angeles, that's when I started to really enjoy the practice, but I still only meditated occasionally. So I'd moved from being a reluctant dabbler to an occasional meditator. And then about a year later, I started dating someone who also learned how to meditate with my teacher, and she just fell in love with the practice. And as the more experienced meditator, I wanted to finally match her energy when it came to the commitment. So I made a promise to myself, no more skipping meditation. Every day, twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, 0 excuses. And I have to say that one decision completely changed the quality of my meditation experiences. My awareness got sharper. I thought I had a good connection with my intuition, but then it became crystal clear. And I was able to sense things and feel things that started to become so obvious to me. The right collaboration, the right environment to put myself in, the right relationships. It was kind of like I was able to see around the corner. And again, I wasn't forcing myself to meditate like this. I actually love the practice. I just committed to not skipping anymore. And I credit that experience with giving me the compass that I could now completely trust which direction was my true north. No more asking people for their advice, no more overthinking. I knew where I needed to go, and I had the courage to follow it. And that consistency changed everything else. My life started rearranging itself around my true path and purpose. The right people appeared at the right time. Things flowed. Whenever I met somebody who I was interested in romantically, turns out they were also on the same frequency. Like I never had to doubt that stuff anymore. So whatever your centering practice is, whether it's meditation, prayer, journaling, walking, breathing, being in nature, don't just do it when you feel like it. Make a decision to truly commit, because that's where the compounding magic happens that brings your inner voice to life. So to recap, 3 decisions that will completely change your life. Stop dulling your awareness in whatever way you happen to be doing that. Start following your heart relentlessly, especially in small ways. And number 3, be hyper consistent with your inner work. Now, again, it's not always going to be easy. Some days you're going to want to quit. Some days it's going to be inconvenient. Other people might think you're being rigid, but from the spiritual perspective, those are the defining moments. Those are 3 decisions that will move you towards your true path and help you find your true north. And if you're not sure where to start, I wrote a book called The Year You Transform, which will provide you with a menu of many 7-day challenges that will help you push yourself out of your comfort zone into your growth zone, help you start meditating, help you wean yourself off of alcohol if that's what you're feeling called to do, help you say yes to things that may scare you, but they feel aligned. I call it the tortoise approach to change because it takes the slow and steady road to change. So if you're not sure where to start, I would say pick up that book. It'll walk you through the entire transformation process. And let me know in the comments if you end up trying any of those challenges, or did you quit something that dulled your awareness? Did you follow your heart in any kind of meaningful way? Have you committed to any of your inner practices? And if this episode spoke to you, definitely check out my other episode on the harsh realities of committing to your inner work. And I have another fascinating episode on the 5 lies that are secretly holding you back. And otherwise, thank you so much for watching This Spiritual Perspective. If you feel like you got value out of it, make sure you like, you comment, you subscribe so that other people can discover these episodes. And in the meantime, I will see you in the next Spiritual Perspective.